Yes, a new rendition, but we're back to the OG intro music. This is the Executives of Fantasy Football. This is the Hurdle. It's Tuesday night, my dudes, and I'm back with my main man, Matty Kiwoom, at Matty Kiwoom on X. And tonight we're going to be talking about point blank period, NFL free agency, because 7 days from now, we will know the landing spots for a majority of these cats because the tampering window opens up next weekend. But today we had a bevy of franchise tags, transition tags, released players, news that players will not be franchise tagged. We had a trade last night. We had a couple guys resign. And all of a sudden the wide receiver market is a little less dense than it was just 48 hours ago when we were in Indianapolis together. Matty Kiwoom, how are we doing?
Doing great. It feels good to be back. A lot of shows, a lot to talk about. A lot of combine talk, so I'm happy to kind of switch it up and kind of dive into the NFL because, you kind of forget that we're in the thick of the offseason. Tampering period starts less than a week away. As you mentioned, free agency's a week away. And we are, 50 days away from the draft? I mean, we're right there.
51
days. Unreal.
And until we're together again in Detroit City. I'm excited. But those are the official dates. So tampering window opens up on March 11th. So that will be Monday at noon. The tampering window will open and it will close on the 13th at 4 p.m., which will be Wednesday at 4 p.m. So Monday at noon to Wednesday at 4 p.m. is going to be chaotic. Nothing will be official. And then the new league year starts at 4 p.m. next Wednesday. Now, again, we will be live here next Tuesday night on the Hurdle. So we will be talking probably again about free agency, but we'll have a couple more landing spots and we'll have snap reactions to give you our thoughts on these guys. But tonight we're going to be talking about some of the big breaking news, which is franchise tags. Michael Pittman is franchised by the Indianapolis Colts. Pretty big news when you looked at the wide receiver grouping. Michael Pittman, like I said, franchised by Indianapolis Colts. Mike Evans re-signed by Tampa Bay. There will be no franchise tag for Saquon Barkley. And what was the other one? Wasn't there another wide receiver? Did I just miss out? There was one more wide receiver I was missing.
No, I think because Saquon and Tony Pollard were both notified at the same time that they were not to be franchised. T. Higgins was franchised pretty early. Michael
T. Higgins, that was the one. Yes.
So we've got some news so far. It seems like I would say the way most people probably have been game planning their off seasons and kind of building their narratives in terms of their strategic, kind of prep for rookie drafts for their dynasty season and whatnot. It's going pretty chalk. There's really not any big surprises yet.
But I think that was the big thing is wide receiver position. Now you talk about T. Higgins. I forgot about him. T. Higgins was franchise tagged last week. Michael Pittman franchised today. And then Mike Evans re-signs on a 2-year deal, $52 million, I think it was, in Tampa Bay. So that's the three big names for free agency. So now we're looking currently at Gabe Davis potentially being that number one most, highest paid wide receiver on the market right now. Other names in this conversation, Matty, I'd love to hear your thoughts on a couple of these guys. Calvin Ridley, Hollywood Brown. Sounds like Michael Thomas from the Saints is going to be available as well. Of course, Odell Beckham, Chark, Mooney are out there. But do you feel pretty good about old Gabe Davis being the highest paid wide receiver in this group? It kind of potentially is lining up to be like a Christian Kirk type of a situation where Gabe just by nature of the situation he's sitting in is going to be, do I say $19-20 million wide receiver? Is that a fair ask?
That's kind of where I'm asked about that. But man, I don't know. Would you give Gabe Davis $20 million with this rookie class? No. I'm nervous for these guys. They'll find landing spots, but they better not play hardball. They're going to find themselves playing on their option C team, because if you're faced with, I could the contenders. I could pay Hollywood Brown, or I could try to get Xavier Worthy. I could pay up and pay a ton of money for Calvin Ridley, or I can just get Adonai Mitchell. Oh, yeah. Let me get Dave Davis. Let me get Gabe Davis. Why don't I just get Brian Thomas? It just feels like there are better options in the draft. And unfortunately for these teams, they have to make decisions on their money pre-draft. So Yeah, there'll be landing spots, but I don't know who's going to get what. I'm not excited about any of these guys. To me personally, if I was building a team, my number one free agent is Marquise Brown. My number two is Tyler Boyd. And I'm factoring money here because I think Tyler Boyd's a good vet, crafty guy, sure-handed guy, can play the slot. He's going to come a hell of a lot cheaper than the other guys we just named. So it just feels like to me that these top-of-the-line guys, the Gabe Davis, Hollywood Brown, Calvin Ridley, teams are going to have to be kind of silly, in my opinion, to overpay them right now.
Every year we see a couple of these guys fall past the first week of free agency, right? Last year, the quick couple, and then it's bang. Got to kind of wait and see how the draft unfolds to see where these guys end up signing. It kind of feels like that tier is going to be moved up. Like last year, if it was this class last year, maybe you're talking about that cutoff being somewhere along the lines of Equanimeous St. Brown, Quez Watkins, Nick Westbrook. This year, it feels like that cut line may be a lot closer to the Donovan Peoples-Jones, the KJ Osbornes of the world, where you know what you have, but you also know what this draft has, which is the number one fastest draft class of all time, according to the NFL Combine over the last 20 years. You know the depth. We've talked about the depth of this class being receivers out to wide receiver 17, 18, strong depth. And I could tell you right now, just if I'm straight up looking at 2024 rookie rankings that I just adjusted last night, they're going to be up over at rosterwatch.com, and all the other stuff is going to be over at the draftrankings.com. That stuff's going to be coming up shortly. But if you're talking about drafting a Ricky Pearsall the third, fourth round, would you have a Ricky Pearsall in third, fourth round, or are you going to go out and try to get yourself a Chase Claypool or Van Jefferson? Like that seems like a
Ricky
very
Pearsall. And the way Ricky Pearsall has even performed, what's the gap between Ricky Pearsall and Calvin Ridley? Let's be honest. Would you rather pay Calvin Ridley $16 million a year or draft Ricky Pearsall? I feel like after the layoff, was Calvin Ridley good, but was he dominant by any stretch? No. Is he a $16 million receiver, damn near pushing 30? No.
Bingo.
I
think that's, even Jaquan Jackson, dude. Jaquan Jackson from Tulane didn't have great tape, but the Senior Bowl, smash. Did pretty good. Exceeded expectations. The Combine, he comes in. I think his role is defined as what it's going to be. I don't think he's going to be, this world beater, but I don't see a problem with him coming in and performing higher and giving you more output than, the Paris Campbells, the Sterling Shepherds, LaVisca. Like this is like receiver 18, 15 to 18 in the free agency room right now is that tier. And I'm talking about Jaquan Jackson, who's currently my wide receiver 24, and I like him.
Right.
Jacob Cowing, Isaiah Williams, Anthony Gould. I think that's going to be the biggest problem here with this receiving group. And again, we're talking about Higgins, Pittman, and Evans going back. I think teams are going to now look at this room and go, I don't want to give Gabe Davis 20. I don't want to give Calvin Ridley 18 to 20. I don't want to give, Curtis Samuel 8. I don't want to do this. Let me just sit back and let me just sit there in the fourth and fifth round, peg a Jalen McMillan, peg a Ricky Pearsall, peg guys like this. So I think that's just a big conversation point is the wide receiver room. Do you have any other thoughts on the dichotomy between the rookies and the free agents? Is there any free agents that you would potentially target if you were an NFL team? Because right now, like I said, the helium has almost been completely sucked out of this free agency group at the wide receiver position.
The wide receivers that I'm most interested in are the ones that I can get dirt cheap. I'm looking at the list now. Guys like Kendrick Bourne, Darnell Mooney, KJ Osborne.
I like Mooney.
Those are the guys that I'd probably try to sign on the low. But the ultimate problem, like you mentioned, the relationship between the rookies and these free agents are eerily, or I should say the problem with the free agents that their skill sets are eerily similar to receivers in that range in the draft. I mean, you just look up and down. It's like, would you give, a guy like Paris Campbell a contract for his speed, or would you just try to draft Anthony Gould late? Like, would you rather have Darnell Mooney, or would you rather have Jaquan Jackson later in the draft? Would you rather sign Curtis Samuel to a bunch of money, or would you rather draft Malik Washington? It just feels like that these skill sets are so similar that I don't know. Is it unprecedented to see a ton of free agents at one position not sign until after the draft? I don't know. I can't imagine you putting up with and trying to sign Odell right now when you could just dive into the the draft. There's no Mike Evans, there's no Pittman, there's no Higgins. In my opinion, there are no real difference makers for the money. Could Calvin really go to a team to help out? Sure. Same thing with Hollywood Brown, Gabe Davis, sure, Michael Thomas, even. Like I said, Tyler Boyd and Curtis Samuel, you mentioned. Those guys will help football teams and they'll find homes, but you're not going to back up the Brinks truck knowing that there are a ton of rookies. And I will say this is because sometimes, you've been doing the drafting a lot longer than I have, but sometimes the fantasy community falls in love with a certain position. And then you hear from the Lance Zierleins and the Daniel Jeremiahs that the NFL isn't nearly as high on this position as the people in the media are, the fantasy people are. You're getting zero indication of that. All you're ever hearing from the national guys, from the scouting community, all of them is that this draft class is stupid deep. And I think we saw that even more so on Saturday.
100%. And just a reminder, those franchise tag numbers for T. Higgins and Michael Pittman came in at $21.8 million against the cap. That is 14th highest in the NFL. Amari Cooper's at 23.7. Terry McLaurin, 24.1. Christian Kirk at 11th, $24.2 million. I don't know if Gabe Davis quite gets up to that conversation. We know Justin Jefferson's about to get a contract. The rumors for that one are $31, $32, $33 million a year. So again, it's going to just continue to reset this thing. But Gabe Davis feels like he's going to come in around that 17, 18, $19 million marker, which is in the Cortland Sutton, DJ Moore conversation at this point. Let's move on to the running back position here. I think there's a few. This is going to be much more interesting, I think, as far as free agency goes this year. Mm-hmm. Definitely different than years of past with Dalvin, with Fournette, with all these other guys that have kind of aged out just because of the reverse conversation we just had with the receivers. But the running back position, the running back class for the rookies, not that strong at the top here. And the free agency group, it's aging. I think there's going to be some guys being able to take advantage of this. But first, I want to appreciate everybody who is here in the chat, everybody who is here and tuned in, tapped in at 7 p.m. on Tuesday night. Just a reminder to go over to the Executives of Fantasy Football YouTube channel. Will be live every Tuesday, every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Shout out to Player Profile for having us on at 7 p.m. on Tuesdays. We appreciate you guys. We love you guys. And just a reminder, please click that like button. Please click subscribe and just let us know you hate us or you love us. We don't care either way. We love you. So drop a comment. Let us know what you're thinking. And don't forget to go over to thedraftrankings.com, thedraftrankings.com. You can get dynasty rankings, cornerstone rankings, all of that stuff, as well as communicating with us on the daily. Running backs, Matty Kiwoom. Saquon Barkley not getting the franchise tag. Josh Jacobs is in conversations with the Raiders. Derrick Henry out of Tennessee. Austin Eckler, I saw him publish some video on Twitter today. I didn't really listen to it, to be honest with you, but he's talking about having good people around you. So that's typical Austin Eckler. He's a great guy. DeAndre Swift, 25 years old in Philadelphia. Tony Pollard, Dallas. Devin Singletary, Houston. Alexander Madison enters free agency now as he's cut by the Minnesota Vikings this last week, all the way down to Antonio Gibson, J.K. Dobbins. Like, that's 10 deep of guys that we think you can stick in there and play. And I haven't even mentioned, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, A.J. Dillon, Zach Moss. There's guys in here that you can plug in and give a couple million bucks, and you can come in and depend on them. Now, when you're looking at the running back position as far as what these guys are making in the NFL, it's definitely not the same conversation as these wide receivers. Of course, Alvin Kamara, who's the highest paid running back right now, $18.7 million cap hit is ridiculous. New Orleans is, about $1.2 billion, I think, over the cap as it stands. Kamara also may enter this conversation sooner than later, but it drops off quickly, true. Right? 18 for Kamara, 17 for Jones, 15 for Chubb, 14 for McCaffrey, down to 10 for Jonathan Taylor, and then it's down to 8 for James Conner. The question I guess I'm going to ask you is, do you think a Saquon, a Jacobs, a Henry, Eckler, Swift, Pollard, anybody even gets close to $10 million at the running back position? And coupled in with that, how many of these guys would you take over, Brooks, Benson, Jalen Wright out of the rookies?
So I only think one running back gets over 10. I think a second pushes 10. I think Barkley gets 10, and the reason being that there are a handful of teams with a ton of money that could use Barkley, namely the Houston Texans, which you're already hearing a little bit of steam for that love connection. I think Jacobs gets close to it because at the end of the day, I think the Raiders just give him kind of what he wants. They don't want to go with Zamir White. And Jacobs is 20. He's going to be 26 next year. He's been a perennial producer. Really hasn't been a thorn in the side of the Raiders at all. Did what was asked of him with the new head coach. And I think he gets close to 10. And then after that, no, I don't really see anyone getting 10. I think that they're all going to have to, unfortunately, either take creative deals or kind of go head up against the market, which might be a tough move for them. But I do think the way this free agency class is built, and given what the league thinks of running backs, I think that the market, the prices are down. It's almost the exact opposite of the wide receivers. Like, would I rather have Jonathan Brooks than Derrick Henry? If I'm a contender, no. Would I rather have Jalen Wright over DeAndre Swift?
Yeah.
And you know how much I love Jalen Wright. But if the price is close and the investment is similar, I would take Barkley obviously at this age and paying him $10 million over every running back in the class. It's not close. I'd rather have Tony Pollard than mostly everybody in this class. We talked about it on our previous show. We talked about it when we got together on Roster Watch with Alex for you guys as the recap, the Combine recap show. That it's really a class of 5 running backs that you can even get semi interested in. And then there's a secondary class of 2 guys on my list that I might be interested in. And after that, it's like, I'll just wait and just take who's ever there, because we're going to be playing the roster guessing game at that point, in my opinion. So, would I rather have it even gets almost as grim as, would you rather have Marshawn Lloyd or Devin Singletary? And I know a lot of the people are going to go, whoa, of course I'd rather have Lloyd. But it's like, would you? Lloyd's probably okay, but we saw Devin blow up last year in the right situation. So it's just, it's just a little kind of shitty for the way it's built out. I think that these rookie running backs, it's a good case study for us NFL fans, our true football fans like you and I, where we can kind of, it's going to be an experiment whether the position's dead completely or not, because if the NFL doesn't pay these guys with this class coming in, then they literally don't give a shit who runs the football.
When you look at the cap hits for rookies from last year's class, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs are obviously first-round picks, top 15. Bijan's is $4.9 million. Gibbs is $4 million. In conjunction to comparing the Barkley Jacobs of last year, who had 10, 11 million. That number probably comes down to closer to 7, 8, I would assume. And the rest of these guys are going to be south of that. But none of these rookies are going to be drafted top 20. The first rookie that comes off the board is likely to be closer to where Charbonnet was drafted last year, I think around 50. And Charbonnet's cap is $1.5 million. $1.5 million. And Kendre Miller, 1.2. Tyjae Spears, 1.2. Devon Achane, 1.2. Tank Bigsby, 1.2. You can't catch my drift here. You're going to be able to skip over, Eckler, Henry, Jacobs, Barkley if you don't want to pay between 5 and 8, 9 million. Remember, Devin Cook got 8 million. That I think Cook swindling the Jets is going to be something that's definitely going to cause question marks around signing, the Henry Ecklers to those bigger contracts. But my thought more so is, and I've talked to Alex about this, is, and I think I talked to you about it too, but I think Alex brought it up, was that once one of these running backs goes in the late part of the second, it's going to be bang, 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 bang. We might see all 5 go within 15, 20 picks of each other. I don't think that's out of the question. And I think what you're looking at is you're going to be looking at 5 rookies getting paid 1.2. Braylon Allen's 20 years old. Jalen Wright's 21, about to be 22. Trey Benson, I think he's 22, going to turn 23, whatever. Blake Corum, 23. These backs that you're going to be getting on a discount for 3 years, up to 4 years, rather than paying J.K. Dobbins $2.5 million, rather than paying Gus Edwards or A.J. Dillon. You can go get these rookies for this $1.2 million, $1.3 million range. I'm just stuck on DeAndre Swift. I'm stuck on Tony Pollard. I'm stuck on Devin Singletary to kind of see where they fit in the conversation here. And does a Houston potentially go out and go after a Saquon? Does somebody go out there and try to make that big swing because this class is so slim? And again, we're talking about Jonathan Brooks, potentially his RB1, coming off an ACL. He's not even going to be cleared till July 1 at the earliest. I just, where do you see Pollard, Swift, Singletary kind of coming through in this? Do you think there's a chance that one of those three guys can jump into the top four as far as their cap is the next couple of years? Swift is 25, man. Swift is 25 years old, and he proved in certain situations when that Eagles offensive line was healthy that he could do it. He could put up 150, 160 and a couple of receptions and be healthy doing it. So I've never been a Swift guy. You know this. But I remember not a year ago, but 8 months ago, we had this conversation. I told you, man, I got Swift. I think I had him like 9th in Dynasty. And never have I ever been that high on Swift. But I was confident in the situation. I'm just saying if he gets into a similar situation or goes back to Philly with a healthy offensive line, I don't know.
My gut always tells me if the team that they're on has zero desire to bring him back, that's your indication of how the league's probably going to look at him as a whole. There will be outliers, namely Saquon Barkley. But, I mean, do you think any team has pinned one of these guys as a focal point to their offseason plans, or is it just going to be, hey, look, Tony Pollard's agent just called us. He said that his numbers now is down to 3.2 per year. Or we can give him like a fugazi 3-year deal, kind of like Miles Sanders got last year. And then team goes, okay, now we don't have to worry about it in the draft. We'll just, there's other resources we can use. The guys that I'm looking at in the rookie or in the free agent class that I'm not going to say I'm most excited about, but I could see a massive value bump. So in fantasy, might be worth trying to buy cheap. A.J. Dillon didn't necessarily his talent didn't come to fruition. We didn't see him at full thoughts here, but let's say he goes to a team and they just give him a few more. Let's just put it this way. I could see a very, very similar 2024 for A.J. Dillon as we saw for Devin Singletary in 2023, meaning this doesn't go to someone for big money. Everyone's like, oh, you don't want that guy. You want the younger guy in the roster. And I'm like, I'll take Dillon. And then cut to week 6, and all of a sudden he's playing well. And the other guy that I still think might have some of the highest ceiling in this entire free agent class, Tony Pollard.
Oh, you almost got me. You almost had me out of my chair. You almost got me out of my chair. I thought you was going to say Antonio Gibson. I thought you was going to say Antonio Gibson.
I did say that. What did I say?
You said Tony Pollard.
I meant to say Tony Gibson. I swear to God. I swear to God, I meant to say Tony Gibson. I don't know. I was like, the same list.
I was like, he's going to say it. And then you said Tony Pollard. And I was like, oh shit.
That was a complete brain melt because I was looking at Antonio Gibson. I guess my problem is I always call him Tony G when his name's Antonio Gibson.
Yep.
So I just went to Tony, saw Pollard, said Pollard. That sometimes brain farts happen for your boy. But no, I think Antonio Gibson's the most appealing guy. And if I was a GM, he's the second guy. He's the only other guy. If I have money for Barkley, sure, I'll get into those sweepstakes. But if I'm not looking to get there, I'm immediately going after Gibson over everybody else.
I love that, man. I think that the biggest takeaway here is that this is going to be almost the opposite of last year, where the receivers might be sitting there. Hey, agent, do we got any calls? No, we got none. And this is the receiver talking. And then on the other side, you're going to have Zeke getting calls the first week of free agency. And people are going to be shocked by it. Zeke signs a 1-year deal the end of next week. And it's going to be a telling thing when that happens that, Zeke has an offer on the table from, the Vikings or some crap like this, right? And they're going to be like, wait, why? What? It's going to be a straight tell, exactly what we just brought up with this running back class And you can see these full rankings over at thedraftrankings.com. Dynasty rankings will be updated this week. Cornerstone rankings will be updated next week. And you'll be able to see where me and Matty think about this draft class at the running back, the receiver, the tight end, the quarterback positions. And I'm just going to tell you right now, that top 5, and everybody knows the names, it drops off quick. I'm going to go see Will Shipley next week at the Clemson Pro Day, hopefully, and we'll see if he can run something nice and see if he can add himself to that conversation right now. But right now, it's not that pretty at the running back position. Obviously, the receiver position is a little bit different. But Matty, let's talk about these quarterbacks, and then let's get cooking tonight. The quarterback position added a quarterback for free agency, and that's Russell Wilson. Baker's still out there. Kirk is still out there. Russ was just cut with I think he's got over $80 million in dead cap, the largest of all time. I think it's twice as large as the second number. I think Anand tweeted that number out.
It's bonkers.
But Kirk, there was a rumor that Kirk is currently looking at houses in Atlanta.
It was worded very particularly, but it was like, it didn't say sources. It said reliable indications suggest that Kirk Cousins is preparing to move his family to Atlanta. Ergo, he's about to sign with the Falcons next week.
Yeah. Very interesting, because we heard some stuff about Justin Fields, and I think everybody did last week about him going to Atlanta. But the Justin Fields thing we feel like is going to happen the next week if it's going to happen. And it sounds like it will. So Kirk's out there. Baker, Russ. We've talked about Baker before. We both think he's going back to Tampa. Where do you think Russ and Kirk do fit in this conversation? Do you think Kirk does fit in that Atlanta one, or do you think he's going back to Minnesota? And then where does Russ fit for you? Because we haven't had this conversation at all yet about where Russ fits in free agency, fits in 2024, Washington, Minnesota. Where do you see this thing kind of ending?
I think Kirk goes to Atlanta for 2 reasons. One, I think that Atlanta realizes that the price to move up is too rich for their blood. And on top of that, I think that the Vikings don't seem to care that the price is that high. You just continuously hear this drumbeat that they like the rookies, that they want one of these rookies. So, yeah. And then you're also hearing trickle-down rumors. Now, this might be for 2 different reasons, but I've now come across a Justin Fields to Minnesota rumor, a Russell Wilson to Minnesota rumor. It's tough. And you know what? Memphis is 150% right. The market for Fields seems way lighter than anyone would have believed at this point in the process, where if you look at the betting odds, it was minus 400 while we were in Indy for Atlanta. Now the highest is Atlanta at like plus money. And then number 2 is the Bears. Now, I understand that he's on the Bears, so it's kind of like the Bears versus the field type of situation. But from what I've heard, it seems like it's a foregone conclusion. Caleb's there. He's gone 1-1. Bears are getting their new franchise quarterback. So I don't know. It seems like it feels like Fields may fall first. There's a lot of F's in that sentence. It was tough to say. But the Fields deal may fall first because teams then can have their backup plan. But as far as Russell Wilson goes, I'm not touching him for a 10-foot pole. That guy does not seem to be the leader that he was once believed to be in Seattle.
Washington, just pick one of these ones for Russell Wilson. Washington with Cliff Kingsbury. New England, take your bias out. New England, because they have the cap, and it allows them to go Marv or tackle at pick 3. Or does he wedge himself into like a Minnesota? Or
I think he could wedge himself into Minnesota, but I think the best thing for him to go to
New England.
It is New England. It is, because he can just be the face. He could be the guy. But from what we heard in Indianapolis was that they value all 3 picks as top 3 picks, which means they're going to go quarterback, which means they have no use for Russ. There's no need for Russ. No need at all. But what I could see end up happening is, Kirk goes to Atlanta. Minnesota finds their quarterback. Baker goes to Tampa. Patriots, Bears, and the Commanders all find their quarterback. And then Russ is sitting there kind of with nothing. And what I could see happening is a little phone call from Mike Tomlin being like, hey, we're not going to give you the starting job, but we would love to see you come compete against Kenny Pickett. And we all know how that would end. It would end with Russell Wilson winning the job because Pickett's not that good. But unless a report comes out that he's willing to be a backup, I just don't see that for him at this point in time.
Trey Lance was traded for a 4th-round pick last August. Just to put that out there in the Justin Fields conversation, he was traded for a 4th-rounder. Technically, we've seen more out of Justin Fields, but I think Memphis brings up an interesting conversation about Justin Fields in the market, potentially not being as sparse. I don't think he's going to draw a 4th. I think it's going to be obviously a 3rd or a 2nd and something on top. But I think that's just a very interesting thing to bring up. My prediction, I had this conversation. I talked to my brother's dad like 3 times a year. He's had Viking season tickets for 50-some years. And he said, what are the Vikings going to do? And I said, this is what I think. This is my prediction here. Listen to this one, Matty. Ready?
I love it.
We know the Vikings want to move up. My prediction is the Vikings move up to 2 in the next 10 days. Because everybody knows what 1 is, right? Last year, the Panthers traded for 1 because nobody knew what number 1 was, and they needed a quarterback. We know what 1 is. We know 1 is Caleb. So the pick that's on the books or on the block right now is that Washington pick. I think Minnesota trades up to Washington the next 10 days. And the draft starts out Chicago, Minnesota. Minnesota takes May. And then on draft night, after the May pick happens, New England has the phone hot. We heard rumors that New England doesn't love Jaden Daniels. We'll see if they draft or if they add Russ in free agency, whatever happens, they trade, whatever. Then that New England pick is a very hot commodity on draft night. It's like in dynasty rookie drafts. You hold your pick till the last moment. Washington, they're gonna get enough from the Vikings because the Vikings moving up from 11 to 2.
Yeah.
But New England's gonna hold that thing in the holsters till the last minute. They got all this cap to spend, and they got the number 3 pick. I think they're gonna do it right. I think they're gonna add potentially a Russ. I think on draft night, New England's gonna be sitting there in the 3-hole. Williams, May, flat circle. New England's on the clock. What are you doing? Take us home, Matty. What are you doing?
If I'm New England, if I'm the team builder in New England, I'm trading back. I'm signing. I would rather not sign Russ. I would actually try to get maybe Russ. If I was the Patriots, I'd try to get Fields. I think, but given their market, it's probably an early 3rd. And then maybe next year's 4th or next year's 5th. At that price point, I'm in. So I would try to do that, but I would try to trade back. And the reason why I'm trying to trade back is for 2 reasons. 1, the draft capital you will receive that you just mentioned. And 2, there are not 1, there are not 2. There are 3 franchise-altering wide receivers in this class. And if you move back, if you can stay in the range, you're going to get 1. If you can stay in the top 10, you're definitely getting 1. That's the move.
You can find us at Matty Kiwoom on X, at Cody Carpentier on X. Make sure you stay tuned in, tapped in to the Hurdl on the Executives of Fantasy Football YouTube channel every single week, Tuesdays and Wednesdays nights. You can also get our Dynasty rankings, Cornerstone rankings, things of that nature at thedraftrankings.com. That is thedraftrankings.com. It's a brand new site. It's a brand new brand. You can find it on X. The website is up. But the website does not, it's not completed. So it's going to kick you to our Patreon. You can come over there. You can support the show. You can support the boys. You can chat with the boys. You can hang out. thedraftrankings.com. Take us out. I want one last take. Matty, give the good people that have been tuned in here. We've got a lot of people tuned in here. I want to appreciate every single one of you guys. I love all of you guys. But Matty, give these guys a tease for tomorrow night. Who is your wide receiver 1 in this rookie class? On this Tuesday, March 5th, who is your wide receiver 1 in this rookie class?
Listen. You're not going to get me to put the cart before the horse. You're not going to get me to reveal.
The Bayesian process, you can change.
we're not going to put me on the spot here and get to give away my wide receiver one. You're going to have to tune in tomorrow to see that. But I will give you a hint. It rhymes with Gnome Monday.